And welcome, Mindsetters, to this session of Learn Extra Live. We're here doing the grade 10 life science. And I've got Cheryl here. It's her first time, so Mindsetters, make sure you get on the page and show her some love and say, hey, let her know how she's doing. And on that note, Cheryl, what are you doing today?
Hi, good evening. We're going to be looking at the circulatory system today, but most importantly, you have already done it. So what we're going to look at is revision, a couple of questions that can prepare you for the exam. So just basically an overview of what you have already done.
All right, awesome. So while Cheryl makes her way across the board,
Thank
there
you,
you
Ty.
go. Mindsetters, you know the drill by now. Make sure you get on the page. Let us know what you're thinking. If you're lost in it, if you need help, if there's something that you'd like to specifically ask, make sure you get it to me on the page and I can get that to Cheryl, who will help you out. But as I always say, Mindsetters, if you don't post, I can't help you. So post. And yes, we're still pushing to try and get to 15,000. So make sure you get your friends to get another friend to get another friend on the page and get chatting to us. But on that note, this is where I hand over to Cheryl, who's going to continue the show. Take it away.
Thank you, Ty. Welcome on this really cold Wednesday evening. I'm sure you guys have had such an exciting week with the snow yesterday. I know at school yesterday it was absolute chaos, all right, with all the different weather that's happening at the moment. But it's time now to just settle back and get a nice cup of coffee or something and just relax, and let's go over what we've done throughout the year so far. As you will see tonight, we are going to be looking at just a revision of the circulatory system. You have done already some of the things already, as you will notice when we look at some of the topics that we're going to look at. You have done it all before. You've looked at the heart, the structure of the heart. I know you were even very lucky enough, all right, to see a dissection. We're going to look at the blood vessels. This again, quickly, just to recap, we're going to look at the blood, especially the plasma and the cells, and then lastly, the lymphatic system. So we're not going to really do as much teaching of those structures tonight, but we're just going to quickly look at revision. You guys are going to be writing tests soon and how to study for those. Okay, so now when we're looking at, all right, the circulatory system, just quickly go back, all right, remember just terminology that you need to learn: the open circulatory system, the closed circulatory system. Remember the open circulatory system, all right? I'm sure some of you have you've squashed an insect before and all the yellow and the goo has all come out, right? That's because their blood doesn't travel, right, in specialized blood vessels, right? All the oxygen is all over the show. It's dissolved in the fluid, and that we call an open circulatory system. You'll hear about a hemicole when you get to grade 11 next year. You'll start to learn more about the structure of the insects. If we look at a closed circulatory system, here I've got a picture of a fish. All right, you will notice, quite simply, blood stays in blood vessels. We've got a heart that's going to pump, all right, the blood around. It's going to supply enough blood pressure to get all the oxygen to all the parts of the body. And that is very important, to get oxygen, all right, there as soon as possible, and obviously to take the carbon dioxide and the wastes away. Okay, now, all right, when we start with the studying of the heart, the first thing that you should do is you should have on a piece of paper, all right, you can get a big A4 one or an A3 paper. You can draw freehand, or if you're not very good at drawing, you can photocopy, all right, a picture of the heart, but you need to study in pictures. It's one thing I cannot stress enough. All right, you guys have done this. You need to have a diagram of the heart, all right? So when you look at it, you can associate labels. So when we look at it, all right, you need to know the external structure of the heart, because here specifically, all right, we always tend to color code, all right, when it gets to the heart, because the reds and the blues, we know the blue is deoxygenated blood and the red is oxygenated blood. And that tells us what different blood vessels are involved. It tells us what side of the heart the blood is going to flow, and that is going to be so important when you have to answer certain questions. Okay, so the first thing you do on a piece of paper, it can be stuck to the ceiling of your room or all over your room, you should have, all right, a picture of the heart with labels. Use color, all right? You don't always learn in paragraphs. That comes later. Have an idea in the picture of your mind what you want to do. Okay? And there we go again, when we look at the internal structure of the heart. Once again, you can have it on the same piece of paper, or you can have it on a different piece of paper. But again, draw. It doesn't matter if you can't draw that well. It's not about your drawing. It's about the information that you are trying to get across. And as you will see, once again, right, we are using the reds and the blues. So we know that the blues are the deoxygenated, all right, blood, and we know that the reds are oxygenated blood. Then we know that the blue is always the right-hand side of the heart, and the red is always the left-hand side of the heart. Because sometimes we get confused when we're labeling. We think that because this is our right hand, that's the right and that's the left, and we forget that it's a mirror image, and we need to cross over. That is the right, and that is the left. Okay, so once again, use color, the reds and the blues, so we know. Now we're going to go on to our first question. Okay, and if you can see there, what have I given you? A very plain, simple diagram of the heart. Okay, you guys, there are so many questions that you can ask. One of the things that you should also maybe invest in is try to get some study guides, or maybe your library at school, collect past papers. Right? Go and get those, or go and ask teachers if you can have copies, and then try and see the different kinds of questions that they can ask you, so that you're not just bogged down to certain questions. Okay, I've chosen fairly simple ones for you tonight, just so that we can get into it and we don't start off in too difficult to note. All right, so if we look here at the heart, all right, already what you should be seeing, you should be concentrating on, if you look at the labels, we can see A and B are the atria, right? The top chambers of the heart, the atrium. If we look at C and we look at D, we're looking at the bottom chambers. They are the ventricles, all right? Then if we look at, remember, the heart brings in, all right, oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood, and it needs to pump it out again. So we look, there's a label X here. So we really should be thinking to ourselves, okay, that's coming into the heart, and it's coming onto the right-hand side of the heart, so it should be a vein. Remember, veins come to the heart. If we look over here, we see we've got another letter, Y, and we see that it's coming from the left-hand side of the heart, so we know it's going away out of the heart, so we know it's an artery. So the chances are it's going to have oxygenated blood. So already, just by looking at the picture, you should have a slight idea already of what they can ask. The other things that we should notice when it comes to the heart, the valves. All right, as you can see over here, the valves are also going to play an important part, because if they are open or closed, that will give you a great idea, okay, of whether the heart is in relaxation, right, diastole, or if it's contracting, which is going to be systole. So let's have a look at the questions and see if you guys can answer them. All right, the first one is a simple table. So let's get our pen so we can start to, right, let's choose pink for today. Okay. You have to look at the diagram, and it says to you, complete the table below to show whether the valves are open or closed. Okay, so you have to look at the valves. So now we know the valves are going to open and close, all depending if the heart is contracting or relaxing and which chamber it is. But it goes on to tell you something very specific. It says when the pressure in the chamber C is at its highest. So if we go back to the picture over here, we're going to see there is chamber C. Okay, so it is on the left-hand side, so we know that if it's under pressure, all right, sorry, let me just go back there for you quickly. All right, let's go back one. Okay, so if we are under pressure, what are we having? We have got ventricular systole. All right, so the walls of the heart, remember the left side, much thicker because it has to pump more. All right, the walls of the heart are contracting, they're squeezing. Now it asks you, which of the valves are going to be open and which of the valves are going to be closed. All right, so if we were to go there, between chambers C and B, all right, that would be over there. Okay, so if this is contracting, okay, systole, you definitely do not want to have those open, because remember, what is the function of the valves? To stop backflow. All right, you don't want the blood to go in and then to go out again. The whole process, you want it to get in and out of the heart as soon as you can. So for our first answer, if we look over here, then of the first one, between chamber C and B, you would want it to be closed. All right, then between chambers D and A, let's go back up again. It's the same. The heart must mirror each other, right? What happens on the left side also is going to happen on the right side. So if the valves were closed there, all right, your atrioventricular valves are going to be closed on the right-hand side as well. All right. Now remember that valve, tricuspid valve. Tri, always remember the R, all right, stands for right-hand side. So that is the tricuspid valve. So that valve would also be closed. Okay, now we are going to look at vessel Y, C and Y. So if we go back up again here, look, where do we want the blood to go? We want it to go out of the ventricle into the aorta. All right, and why is the aorta? So if we want to get into the aorta, it would make much more sense if our valves were open, our semilunar valves, our aortic semilunar valve, to be specific on this one. All right, so our answers there would be the atrioventricular nodes, valves would be closed, and our semilunar valves are going to be open. Okay, let's carry on with the next question. All right, same diagram. Right, and the question is, a large amount, explain the advantage. Okay, so why is it a good thing? All right, that there's a large amount of elastic tissue in blood vessel Y. Now, if we go to blood vessel Y, all right, what do we notice? It is an artery. So even though we're asking a question on the heart, all right, we're linking it with the blood vessels. And when we looked at the blood vessels, right, you noticed that there was a difference between the muscular elastic artery, right, that had to pump the blood to the body, and then the vein, which had a much larger lumen and not as much elastic and not as much muscle, because it was under much lower pressure. So here they're asking you, why is it very important for arteries to have the elastic tissue? All right? Can anybody think of the answer? Yes, you're quite right. It's to maintain a high pressure. All right? Because if you have, imagine elastic stretches, all right? But it doesn't, in the arteries, it's not going to stretch as much. So we still retain a little bit of pressure there to get the blood throughout, okay? Because where do we want to get it? We want to get it to the whole body. All right, so the more elastic, the higher the pressure we're going to maintain in the arteries. All right, we are going to then be able to get the blood to the whole body. Okay, that's what we want to do. We need to get the oxygen to all of our cells. If we look at the next question, all right, valves in blood vessels such as blood vessel X. Okay, again, we're tying it up to the blood vessel section. Right, and if we look at X, as I said to you in the beginning, you see it's entering the right, and then we know that then it's going to be a vein. Okay, veins are under much lower pressure, and why do we need to have valves? All right, in the in the veins, quite simply, what do we want to stop? All right, sorry, there we go. Okay, let me just try and erase that for you and make it clearer. Okay, we want to stop backflow. All right, that is the most important thing, because the veins are under they're not under as much pressure as the arteries, as we know. All right, we need to have valves that if the pressure should drop, the blood doesn't sink all the way down. We wanted to get that deoxygenated blood to the heart, all right, to the lungs. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. Still with this question. All right. Now a little bit of an interpretive question. If you had a look at those two questions, all right, you would have done, it's a theory work that you have done. Okay. Here again, what they're giving you a scenario. What would be the effect on a person having a hole in the septum between chambers C and D? All right, so over here, there in the muscle, in the septum, remember septum divides the right side from the left. What will happen if there's a hole? Okay, think, all right, what comes in this side? Deoxygenated blood. So what happens is, deoxygenated blood will then travel from the ventricle of the right-hand side to the ventricle on the left-hand side. So all of a sudden, this horrible carbon dioxide-filled air, all right, instead of it going to the lungs where we can get it oxygenated, it's then going to move into chamber C. So what's going to happen? You're going to have less oxygen. So if we have to write the answer down, I'm going to use an arrow here. You're going to have a decrease in oxygen, all right, going through to your body because it's going to be filled with carbon dioxide. And what's going to happen when you don't have enough oxygen? You don't have enough oxygen for cellular respiration. What starts to happen? Yes, all right, you are going to feel tired, lethargic, all right? You don't, if like you haven't got enough energy. Okay, so they obviously would then want to be able to, if they could, to fix that. Okay, so we don't want the deoxygenated blood going to the left-hand side of the heart. Okay. All right. Now we've dealt with these a little bit, all right, when we started with the question on the heart. And what you would have noticed, as I said to you, you can't study the circulatory system, right, in boxes. You need to concentrate on the heart, but you also know that the questions that we ask now also related to the blood vessels, right? So if we look at an overview here of the blood vessels, what will you notice? Terms again. You need to know the terminology, right? We said that arteries come from the heart. That is what an artery is. Not always carrying oxygenated blood. You know there are a few exceptions, the pulmonary artery, for example. And then it goes to the smallest cells, okay? So blood vessels, they're like the highway system on our roads. We've got it big, the N1, traveling, lots and lots of traffic. But as you get closer and closer to your house, so the roads need to become more specific and smaller. And that's exactly what happens here. An artery becomes smaller, all right, into an arteriole. Arterioles become capillaries, which are our smallest blood vessels, and there we know what's going to happen. Diffusion, oxygen and carbon dioxide are going to exchange, all right, wastes are going to move out, nutrients are going to move in, so very, very, all right, important there. They are then going to go into a vein, all right, and the vein is then going to take all that deoxygenated blood and veins to the heart. All right, so venule and then into a vein. Okay, so there we've got the arteries, the capillaries, and the veins. Okay.
Do you think we can give a little bit of an ad break?
I think an ad break at this stage time would be absolutely awesome.
Yes, before all their veins are
Before
overloaded
all
with
their veins
information.
just explode.
All right. So on that note, mindsetters, as I always say, do not disappear. Yes, fair enough. Go do whatever you have to do. Go to the bathroom, go get a snack, whatever. But make sure you come back after this ad break. We'll see you soon. Cheers. And welcome back, mindsetters. I hope you had a nice little break there. You went and did whatever you had to do. You went to the bathroom, went to get yourself something warm. Because yes, it is freezing cold. I haven't got myself some tea. You can't see it off camera. But anyway, on that note, mindsetters, I hope you're ready. You've got your pens and pads out and you're ready to make notes. Because we're about to hand over to Cheryl. But before I do that, I actually have a question here from Michael. He's now become quite a regular on the page and say, Michael, thank you for supporting the page. And he wanted to find out, how does the heart lose its function? What happens to the vessels?
Hi, Michael. When you say lose its function, I think I don't know if you want to try and tell me what happens if the heart stops beating. And various things can stop the heart beating. When you go back to your diagram of the heart, you will notice that the heart, on the external surface of the heart, there are lots of blood vessels, the coronary artery, the coronary vein. And what can sometimes happen, all right? We're going to look later on, there's going to be, see, I've got a little question on atherosclerosis, where the arteries start to harden. So what can happen, it's not always by somebody's diet, or anybody can, if they have a heart attack, what happens is that somehow that blood vessel either becomes blocked or it bursts. And unfortunately, the muscle, remember the cardiac muscle is a tissue. And if it doesn't get any oxygen, all right, what will happen to the tissue? It will die. Okay, so what will happen if the tissue dies? The heart itself can no longer function, or, all right, if we're lucky and they save it in time, what will generally happen is they'll have what is called a bypass, all right, where they take that area and they graft other blood vessels over it, all right, trying to repair the damage that it's caused. So that is how the heart will lose its function. I hope I've managed to answer your question, Michael. Okay, Ty.
Yes, and then we had another one from Pleasure. He wanted to find out, why does blood have that red color?
Okay, Pleasure, I'm going to answer that one just now because we're going to look at blood. Right, I'm going to show you some of the blood cells, and I'm going to explain to you why red blood cells actually are red. Okay, a little bit of a hint, they actually aren't red, they're orange. All right, but I will explain that to you just now. Is that all, Ty?
Yeah, that's about it for now. So yeah, we can continue.
All right, welcome back. We were busy discussing the blood vessels, all right? And as I said to you, we're talking about arteries, veins, and capillaries. And again, what I'm just going to quickly show you is the visuals. Okay, a picture. Have an idea of a picture in your mind. All right, when we look at arteries, what do we see? All right, very important. A thin, listen the terminology again, very important. Lumen, which is, all right, the narrow opening where blood is going to throw. Then we're going to see that it's going lots of elastic tissue. Remember we said it must, if it's under high pressure, it's going to expand, and lots of muscle, all right, because what do we have to do? It needs to squeeze, all right, the blood so that it can go to all parts of the body. So our artery, big, thick, all right, needs to do a lot of the work. If we look at our vein, okay, we notice the lumen, all right, is much wider. So what happens is because it's much wider, and if you'll notice here, I don't know if you can see some of the words here. It says contains some elastic and some muscle. So nowhere to the same degree as arteries are going to have. So remember veins, they're coming back to the heart, all right? We're under much less pressure, lower pressure, and this is where the key to veins, all right, are valves. Right, we asked it in the question beforehand when we looked at the heart. We brought in the blood vessel question there. All right, we have valves, and that's to stop, all right, the blood from flowing backflow. All right, you will see sometimes if these valves become disformed, all right, you get a condition what is called varicose veins. You'll see they're like little blue knobs on the legs. Okay. Let's have a look at our capillary. Having a look at the capillary, you should already notice the huge difference, all right? It is one single layer of endothelium. Remember endothelium? When we stood at the beginning of the year, you looked at mammalian tissue and we looked at epithelial tissue, all right? And we looked at the simple epithelium called squamous epithelium. Okay, that is exactly what endothelium is. It's simple squamous epithelium. It's one layer thick, and it's very, 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 very small. Okay, no muscle needed, no elastic. It doesn't need to do the work, all right? What it needs to do is facilitate movement across its membrane. Remember, and the thinner it is, the easier things will move. We want oxygen to go out quickly, carbon dioxide to come in. We want the food, nutrients to go into the cell quickly, and the waste to come out. So again, start thinking about that when we deal with one of the questions that's coming up. Okay, let's start with, all right, one of the questions that I have put for you. Here, very simple line diagrams. I have 3 vessels, A, B, and C. Okay, and if you're studying, you remembered the different concepts which had, all right, those different, the more muscle, the more elastic, or the smaller lumen, the bigger lumen, right, this should be quite easy for you. Very simple. Question number 1, identify blood vessels A, B, and C. Okay. Right, I think when you look at it, the most easiest one that you usually, get is the capillary. Okay, and that would be number B. All right, single, look, very small. Okay, here we've got 2 blood vessels that are very similar. They're also very similar, in measurement. The only thing that you should notice, this has a much smaller lumen and far more muscle and elastic, and the lumen here is much bigger. Okay, which would then make number A, an artery. Oh, sorry, that went a bit haywire. Okay, and that would leave us with number C being our vein. Okay, so there we go. Plain simple, being able to identify artery, capillary, and a vein. All right, let's see. I go on to our next question. Okay. All right, here. I find that this, sometimes when we have to work out a calculation, some of you get a little bit panicky because it's maths. I know I was one of those as well. What it's asking us to do is determine the magnification of the drawing of the blood vessel. Okay, I'm not too sure if some of you have done it at school or not, but it's always a handy, I always got a little handy triangle, that I use because I'm not always mathematically inclined, when I need to work out some kind of magnification or drawing size. Okay, we call it the dam triangle. So it is a D. Then we move over here. We've got an A and an M. And what it simply stands for, this is the drawing size. Okay, that is its actual size. And M stands for magnification. All right. Now, if I've asked you the question over here, show the magnification of blood vessel A. All right. You need 2 things, in order to give magnification. So, what is magnification? M equals, look, that's a divide sign. All right. D over A. So, what's my D? That's my drawing. All right, what's my A? That's my actual. Okay, so now I take my ruler out and I measure very accurately. I measure from here to here. That is my drawing size. Okay, I'm just going to use an example. Say, for example, it is 10 millimeters. Look here, keep to your units of measurement, millimeters. All right, and the actual, they've given it to me. All right, they've told me that it's 5 millimeters. Okay, I think it's easy enough, but just in case, just to make sure. All right, so what's 10 divided by 5? All right, we get 2. All right, and the answer is 2 what? Okay, let's get back to the pen. All right, our answer is 2 times. All right, so it's magnified 2 times than it actually would. Always remember your triangle. All right, when you get into a test, quickly put it at the top of your page so that you don't forget. Like you do in science, you've got all those energy and work and force equations that you need. All right, the same applies here to life science. Just keep it in your mind, put it at the top so you know where to put your numbers in. Okay, let's go on to the next one. All right, same thing. Okay, now they're asking you over here. State and explain, very important. If you look at the mark allocation here, it would probably be about 4 marks. All right, 2 important words. It asks you to state and it asks you to explain. So you need to, for your 4 marks, you need to give me a reason and why. Okay, you labeled that capillary. And what did I say about a capillary? All right, it's very, very thin. Okay, so there's my statement. Okay, thin, what would then be the reason for it? One of them, all right. How about if we say easy diffusion? All right, diffusion of what? Oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, waste. So there we go. I've stated one of its advantages, what it's suited for, and why. All right, and I've explained it. What do you think the next thing would be? We could have a variety here. How about narrow? All right, they are very, very narrow. Right, in actual fact, red blood cells can fit through single file. All right, and why is that very important? If it can fit through single file, again, all right, what does it infuse? It makes diffusion far more. All right, diffusion is quick and fast. Okay, or more efficient is a word that you can use. Okay, so when we look at the capillaries, what is its function? Its function is to move things in and out. Okay, so how is it made? Its structure and its function tie together. So we have something that's thin and narrow, so the blood vessels move through, so that enables the oxygen, all right, each cell, all right, to release its oxygen and then to be able to get hold of the carbon dioxide, the blood plasma, the nutrients to get through. Okay, all right, let's go on to our next question. Okay. And Michael, this is leading to one of the questions that you had asked earlier. Okay, what we have here is a blood vessel. Here's the normal blood vessel. And it says over here, this is a diseased blood vessel. Now, the medical term for this condition, all right, and I hope I get the spelling right because it's a really difficult one. Oh, hang on a second. Ooh. Oh, let's just try that. All right, spelling is not always one of my, all right, bonuses. It's called atherosclerosis, and what it is the hardening, here we go, it's the hardening of the arteries. Okay, usually when we tend to eat food that's very high in fat, and we know that fat is cholesterol, right? And where do we sometimes hide that cholesterol? That can line the arteries, and it makes it harder, all right? And it makes it, when it makes it more narrow, it increases our blood pressure, which puts us at risk at strokes, right, at aneurysms, etc. Okay, let's look at that question. What do we call that gunk, all right, that lays down in our arteries? And it's the same one as we use for our teeth. We call it plaque, all right? So the same as teeth, we call it plaque. That lines the arteries, it makes it harder, and it causes the arteries to harden and not to work as well. The same as plaque in our teeth causes our teeth, all right, to then become fraught, and we need to have them taken out. Leading on to that question, again, all right, here, briefly describe how this condition develops, okay? So here you're asked to bring in your disorders, all right, your diseases of the cardiovascular system. So here we're using the blood vessels, and again we're bringing in, all right, one of the other components, which are going to be diseases of the cardiovascular system. So briefly describe this condition, all right. You can say, I'm just going to put terms down. You need to put those into sentences. You need to use words like cholesterol, all right, which is fat. Okay, and what does it do? It lines the arteries. Okay, it lines the arteries. All right, what else do you need to tell me? It hardens. So you need to word then the arteries harden. All right, then what could happen? A lot of plaque, and the blood and the artery could burst. All right, or it could block. And that would give us then a heart attack or a stroke or an embolism. Okay, so usually what will happen here is people at risk, those people that do lead an unhealthy lifestyle, smokers, unfortunately, people who are overweight, obesity, people who don't exercise, right, those are risk factors. However, sometimes you can be genetically predisposed, right, if you've got history in your family, so that you should be aware of to make sure, because you don't actually, the signs and symptoms, you don't actually know until something happens, because there's no indications of that. Okay, Michael, I hope you answered your question there. All right, let's carry on. Okay, pleasure. We're going to answer your question now about the red blood cells. Okay, the one thing you should look at, we're just going to look at the cells. Right, the first thing you should notice is that they are different in structure. Okay, this one over here, we always use the word biconcave disc. That's your red blood cell. not actually red, all right, if you look at a single cell, it is orange. And what it has inside of it is an iron pigment called hemoglobin, all right? So the hemoglobin gives it its orange tinge to it. Now, if you add millions of those orange blood cells to one drop of blood, all right, because that's what it is, it's millions of red blood cells in one drop. All of that orange is going to stick together and it's going to appear as a much darker red. Okay, so the color comes from the iron component that we call hemoglobin. I hope I've managed to answer your question there. When we look at the cells, all right, the white blood cell, larger nucleus. Red blood cell, no nucleus. The smallest of all of them are platelets. Okay, what do you need to know for each of those? Can you identify the structure and do you know the function? All right, red blood cells carry oxygen, carry carbon dioxide away. White blood cells, those are your disease fighters. Okay, and lastly, the small little ones, okay, we call them scabs when they come to the surface. These are your platelets, all right, and they're going to help with the clotting of blood. So look at the three. Are you able to identify, all right, the difference between them, and do you know what their function is? Okay, so if I had to go on to a question, there we go. All right. Here I've got a line graph. It says here, drawing made from an electron micrograph of a longitudinal section of a blood capillary. All right, so there's the capillary. And here, as you're going to see, are 3 different blood cells. Excuse me. All right, also notice here, okay, they've given you an information source. All right, magnification is times 8,000. So we might need to use our triangle again. Okay, we're going to use a table, all right? Quite a simple table here. And some of the information they've given to you, which is nice and easy, which will give you a bit of idea what you're looking at, but just by looking at the shapes of those cells, right? So I think, again, all right,
before we dive
into those questions, all right, we're going to go and have an ad break.
All right, no problem. So on that note, mindsetters, make sure you do not disappear or go anywhere. Make sure, as I've been saying earlier, get yourself something warm, get yourself a blanket, but do not disappear, because we'll be right back after this break. And welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you had a nice little break. You went to do whatever you had to do, but now you're back, you're paying attention, and you've got your pens and pads out, and you're ready to make notes. Because if you're like these other Mindsetters and you've posted up your questions, then that's always a good start. Because we actually have one from Pleasure. You just wanted to find out quickly, what is the function of the valve tendons?
All right, Pleasure. If you have a look at the diagram of your heart, I'm going to just draw it on the side here. All right, you'll see have your valves. All right, and attached to those valves are your tendons, and you'll notice that the walls of your heart, all right, they're attached to the walls of your heart. They're called your chordae tendineae, all right, nice big Latin name there. And what happens is, quite simply, when the heart contracts, all right, the ventricles, these muscles contract and they pull down, and they pull down. So when they pull down, all right, these tendons are attached to the valves. So when the tendons pull down, what happens? They push down and the valves come with them. So their actual function is to open and close the valves of the heart. All right? So when the heart relaxes diastole, the muscles relax, so the tendons relax, and the valves can go back together. All right? I hope that answers your question. So contraction, opening of the valves, relaxation, the closing of the valves. All right? Remember, the opening and closing of the valves is your lub-dub sound, the sounds of the heart. Okay. Is that it, Ty?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, let's carry on with our segment on blood. Okay. Last time, just to recap, we got a question where we looked at 3 different cells. Now, just by looking at this, all right, we should be able to figure out which ones. We're going to say number C. Can you see it? It's flexible. It can squash, and we know that the red blood cells, all right, you guys can red blood cells, or if you would like, the erythrocytes, all right, that is the more biological name, erythro meaning red. All right, over here, those are your common name is your blood, your white. Sorry, let me just do that again. is your white, okay, blood cells, and the word there we use leuco, all right, leuco. Remember when you did the plant cell, you did plastids. Leuco means colorless, all right. Leukocyte, here, leucoplast. And here, the very top one, because they're going to go to the surface of the capillary, because just in case, if it's going to burst or something, we need to contain the bleeding, and that is going to be your platelet. All right, the more scientific name that we use is going to be thrombocyte. So there we have, A is our white blood cell, B, all right, is our platelet, and C is our red blood cell. So if we go back to our table, all right, what you will notice, number C, lacquer, they've given us, already told us what it is, the red blood cell, all right? So it leads us with number A, and it gives you a little bit of a hint here, all right? It says ingest bacteria. So there we know, okay, it should be our white blood cell. And here, okay, permits the exchange of gases. So it helps with the lining and so that our capillaries are intact, and that is going to be our platelets. Okay, so we've got 2 marks so far. The function of the red blood cell, what is the function? It's going to transport. All right. Remember our carbon dioxide and our oxygen, right? If you can see that. So it's a transport mechanism. Okay, it's going to the hemoglobin, it's attached to the oxygen, and that is how we're going to move. Over here, if you would notice, all right, what do we have? We have another one of those sums. So what they're asking for you is the diameter of number A. All right, so if we have a look here, what would the diameter be? Okay, so we're going to measure. There we go, take your ruler and you measure. Okay, now you have got, now this is where the tricky part comes in. You are going to measure in millimeters. All right, much easier to work there. But what do you have over here? What will you notice? Right, your answer needs to be in microns. Okay, your answer needs to be in microns. So you've measured in millimeters, all right, but that is not the unit in which you have been asked. So you need to convert. What do we do? All right, I'm going to just, for example, say it was, all right, let's say it was 15, right, millimeters. How do we convert to microns? We times by 1,000. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there we're going to get the maximum diameter in microns. Okay, let's carry on to the next question. Again, it's the same, we're looking at it. Now, it says, the capillary shown in figure 3 was from a mammal. Okay, red blood cells in mammals have no nuclei. All right, state one advantage and one disadvantage of this. Okay, our red blood cell, there we go. No nucleus whatsoever. Okay, what is the advantage? Okay, think about what the red blood cell does. Okay, what does it do? It transports oxygen. So now imagine if we had a nucleus over here, what would happen then? Okay, the nucleus would be taking up space. And we don't want that. We want oxygen, all right, to be able to fill up the whole cell. So one of the advantages, there's much more space, all right, the advantage. What can we do? We can increase that iron pigment that I told you about, hemoglobin, all right. And if we increase the hemoglobin, amount of hemoglobin, we can transport far more oxygen. The disadvantage, all right, what could be the disadvantage? Cells with a nucleus can very often divide by mitosis. All right, red blood cells are not able to do that. Now, if they can't do that, all right, that means that the responsibility to make more red blood cells leads or falls onto another part of the body. All right, and you guys, before you did circulatory system, you probably did the skeleton. And if we looked at the structure of the long bone, what do we see inside the skeleton? We have bone marrow. And what does the bone marrow do? It gives rise to red and white blood cells. And remember, red blood cells then have a lifespan. And they then have to be, all right, reproduced every so often, approximately every 3 months. Okay, so that would be an advantage and a disadvantage. All right, let's go on to our last section, all right, the lymphatic system. This is always quite a difficult concept when it gets to the lymphatic system. All right, I often explain it like your body is like a pond, like a water feature. You've got a pump, all right, that you constantly need to get the water out, but you also need to get it back in here. Again, if you have a look, we've put the system in of the blood vessels. There's the artery, arterial, capillary, but have a look at these green structures. Right, the first thing you should notice is that they are blind ending. Blood always, all right, stays in its blood vessels. However, lymph, they just start in the middle of anywhere. Okay, so you call them blind ending where our blood vessels tend to have a closed circulatory system. Okay, we also tend to depict it as green, right, because lymph vessels, they transport fats more, and you also see white blood cells. So please when it comes to a diagram like this, you need to be able to label arterial or artery, arterial, capillary, venial vein, all right, and lymph vessel, all right, or lacteal, as some of the times they are called. So if we have a look now, I'm going to start with a diagram, all right. It looks a little bit complicated, but don't be disheartened. Take each thing for as you can see it. All right. This little schematic diagram, okay, already this should tell you that's the heart. Okay, heart-shaped, nice and easy to remember. Okay, here they're telling you that these are valves. Okay, and nice and easy, this one says that this is a vein. All right, we know that veins go back to the heart and they have valves. Okay, if we have a look at this little section over here, I quickly want you to have a look here. You should notice here, that would be the lymph, all right? That would be an artery coming in, a vein going out, and these are cells. All right, and what is going to happen is we need to move substances that the blood plasma moves out into the tissue fluid, all right? And what we'll see here is you need to move that excess tissue fluid into the lymph vessel, all right? So what happens is the blood plasma is when it comes to the capillaries, it's under this large amount of pressure, right? Remember the blood plasma, is our water part. So what happens when it gets into these these capillaries, it squeezes. And the water part, all right, is filtered out because we also have holes in the wall of our capillaries. That's also one of the things we could have said in our question earlier, that there are pores for easy diffusion, okay? So what you can see now, all right, is going to be now all of a sudden the blood plasma, the water part, filters out and it bathes all your cells. You're not biltong inside, all right? You're nice and it's watery, it's very important. But what happens, all right, if that water, you just were losing your blood, your swell. So you need to have a drainage, okay? And here we have the lymph system. The lymph system is going to drain, all right, that tissue fluid and now becomes what we call lymph. All right, so what you've got here is blood plasma that almost changes into tissue fluid, all right, or extracellular fluid, and then you need to get that volume back into the blood, all right, and that's where it drains into the lymph system, and the lymph system is then going to take it and back into the heart. All right, so you'll see over here, if we look at it, okay, there we go. You'll notice the lymph, it's always that blind ending, all right? Blind ending vessel. You'll also notice veins and the lymph vessels, usually, all right, both have valves because they've got to stop the backflow. Okay, so there we go with the lymphatic system. I think that's about as much as we are, all right, have time for tonight. All right, so guys, we've got a few more we can put a lot of questions on the lymphatic system. You can see again, you can tie it up to the blood system. All right, but unfortunately, I think any more questions that we can maybe answer, I think that's it for tonight.
I think
Yeah.
for tonight we might not be able to get through all
Oh
of them.
dear,
That's
we'll
always the
try it
disappointing
next
part.
time.
Yes, always next time. But mindsetters, make sure do not lose hope. And I keep saying mindsetters out there. If you see a mindsetter in trouble on the page, do not keep the answer to yourself. Help each other out and post. Help each other. Just put it there in the comment. It's that simple. We're here to share information. But on that note, mindsetters, I'm here to say again, thank you so much. And we're going to say, see you next time. Cheers.